Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the EmpowerMAN podcast. It's your boy, Mikey G, coming to you from the very free state of Florida. I am joined by the one and the only, the man who taught Michael Phelps everything he knows about swimming, the icon himself, the Connecticut real estate mogul, the franchise, Greggy Tedora. Mr. Greggy, how you doing today, sir?
Woo! I'm good, man. How are you? Great intro.
I'm good. This is brought to you by Publix Diet Ginger Ale.
Gotta love Publix.
You know what? I really do. Got to give a shout out to my boys at Pro Wrestling Tees. I was able to find one of my favorite shirts. It looks really simple. It looks really boring. But back when I was a kid, we would take a shirt, we would get little letters that you could iron on, and we would make lettering. Remember those back in the day with the iron?
Oh, yeah.
Iron them on. They were the best, man. So I got to give a shout out to my boys from Pro Wrestling Tees. Thank you. The shirt's awesome. Very happy. Bought a bunch of other shirts too. So very happy with my stuff.
Awesome, man. I want to give a shout out to London Bridge Trading. This is their collab they did with GBRS Group, which is my favorite. And obviously my boys, Finance and Maneuver, they are the shit. Go check them out on Instagram. They have some of the wildest and awesomest videos. I love their work.
Yeah, man. And as always, we want to give a shout out to our cops, our firemen, our first responders. Thank you all for what you do for keeping our community safe and protecting us and taking care of us.
And thank you to all the military personnel out there across the world. Stay safe and keep your shit up.
Amen to that, Greggy T. Tonight's topic is really cool. We're going to talk about change. A lot of people are afraid of change. People that we know, guys and girls, they get afraid when something is out of their comfort zone. And I've always told people when I talk to them, you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's where true growth talks about, as we talked about the fixed versus the growth mindset in our last episode. So, Greg, when you decided to make changes in your life, why did you do them?
Probably because I had to. I had no other choice. I think the changes that mattered in my life, I think you reach a certain point where you want to go in a certain direction with a certain group of people, family, friends, community, whatever, and you want to make something of your life. So I think we all had fun when we were younger, wild, crazy, whatever, but there comes a point where, okay, you have to make a change where you want to make a difference within yourself, going on that trajectory of where you want to be and where you want to go.
Yeah, first you got to know where you want to go. You got to be able to identify. We talk about that, taking inventory, taking stock. You got to know where you want to go so you can be the change that you want to be. I know for me, some of the choices I made in my life, I needed to change because I couldn't keep doing what I'm doing. But I also, at the time, I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know how to break those cycles. So having the want to change is kind of like the first step. Like, you got to really want to change. There's some people that we know will never change. They'll be doing the same stuff. They'll be stuck in um, the same situations, now 3 years, five years from now. So I think you got to want to change. Greg, when we talk about self-evolution, because I think that's a great adjective to tie into this concept and this topic of change. When you evolved as a person, look at yourself from when you were a kid to when you were a teenager to when you were in college to when we've met to dating your wife, marrying your wife, having kids. Now we're on this platform. Give us a perspective of how that self-evolution evolved. What influences did you have? What people did you hang out with? And how did they help you get to this place that you're at right now in life?
It's a great question. It's a loaded question because I had a great upbringing. So I had truly supportive parents that never pushed me into any sport or anything, but they supported anything that I wanted to do. So to go all the way back to, I wanted to swim. Okay, they're like, I wanted to swim because I have an older sister and she went swimming, and being the annoying younger brother, you want to do everything your older sister does. So, okay, she went swimming, I want to go swimming. So they're like, all right, go. And they took me to practice. I think I cried for 2 hours straight. But fast forward a year and a half later, I'm like the fastest kid in New York. It's all good. But the whole change to your question is, I had support when I was younger. So when I always talk about this, when I wanted to get out of swimming and try other sports, change, I had I had the ability because I didn't have that fear, or I didn't have that pressure that a lot of parents put on their kids to stay in a sport. Or I know a lot of parents that they force their kids to do something, and you can tell the kids don't want to do it. That's not going to be good down the line. But I had two sets of friends growing up. I always had my school friends, and I had my swim team friends, because we all went to all different schools all over. But we came together in mornings and in the afternoons after school to swim. And I think I was extremely lucky growing up to have two sets of friends, both guys and girls, and I was exposed to a bunch of different schools, not just my school, and it allowed for the freedom to try and do and talk to and hang out with a whole bunch of different people, which is change. But it all started because I had the support system of my parents growing up.
But you were kind of afraid because you were crying. You said for a couple hours or
Well, yeah, I was miserable.
miserable.
Yeah, I didn't really want to do what the coach was saying, and I wanted to, I just, it was brand new to me. I wanted to go home, and I wanted, but I stuck with it.
Yeah, and
I
that's a
remember the
lot of
day like it was yesterday, and my memory is not good. Yep.
you mentioned a great. You just said something great. Sticking with it. You can't change is a process. It's an
Hmm.
evolution. When I sought out a life coach at 20, what was it, 29, um, because a lot of the choices I made and a lot of the habits that I had were not particularly healthy, but they were masking a deeper pain that I had. And when I was able to work with a life coach, I knew I needed to change because I didn't want to lose things in my life that I worked hard for, and I didn't want to sabotage those things. And my life coach, Patrick, helped me. Um, Day one, I was able to meditate and kind of like cleanse my body of like different things, and I I I gained so much confidence, and I had a clear vision of what I wanted and how I wanted to change. But it came from doing the reps, meditating every day, protecting. A lot of psychologists get mad at this because you can't really guard the subconscious mind. But when you break things down, you want to be the conscious mind is the gatekeeper to the subconscious mind. So being aware of certain things, and I'm going to say because that's how I was taught, and if professionals that are listening, hopefully you can kind of go along with this. And if you want to correct me, then send me a DM so I can make that correction next week. Um, Being able to guard our minds and let only good things and filter out all the negative stuff to come through our minds. And I needed to change. And when I changed, it was like I had a weight lifted off my shoulder. And that run in 2008, I mean, we don't need to get into specifics, but that was probably the best year of my life.
Didn't I drop you off there?
Yes, you did.
I remember, and I picked you up.
I stayed across from that hotel in
Hmm.
across from the Delano, I think it was.
I remember when I saw you after, and it was just
Crazy.
amazing. It was
It was
amazing.
it was crazy. And that
Amazing.
stuff worked. I mean, meditation worked for me. It may not work for everybody, but
Hmm.
I knew I needed to change. And then, you go through the ebbs and flows of life
Hmm.
because not everything is always linear. You dropped this in the last episode.
Yeah.
So being able to adapt to certain things
Hmm.
and to,
Have the
and
tools to
from,
do it.
and for me, it was like, if I could capture 2008 and put it in a bottle, I would never want to leave it. But the fact is, time moves on, and I
Hmm.
didn't roll with the times. And then I went through, my own journey of self discovery. And here I am in Delray Beach through just sticking with it. I became, more Christian a couple years ago, and it's a process. I still screw up, but I can feel the change inside of me. I can feel it every day. And there's going to come a point where if you keep plugging away at it, things are going to happen. Is that pretty fair to say, Greg?
Absolutely. You feel lighter, right? Because you can kind of go with it better and not totally beat yourself up to for no good reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we talked about this in our last episode about that, the lineage of
Hmm.
that type of victim mentality and that fixed mindset, how it can kind of creep in, and we instead of fighting it, it's like accept it and then use the tools that you have
Yes.
acquired. For me now, I just add scripture as another layer of other tools that I've been able to acquire over 44 years,
Hmm.
45 years soon. So I think that brought me to this place in life where you and I can now try to affect a whole
Yeah.
world of
Yeah.
people so that they can change.
Let me ask
And
you a question, because
absolutely,
I when you lived in Manhattan for a long time,
I did.
longer than me, and I remember you were thinking of moving down to DC,
Yes,
but you were very afraid to move down there because I guess change.
yes.
My question is, why do you think you were afraid of change at that point in your life?
Great question. I think it was breaking the chains of the lineage that was passed down. Like
Hmm.
my mom did the best she could, but she lives in a fixed mindset. It's not her fault. It's just the way she is.
Hmm.
And that was by no choice of her own. Just, I kind of took that on. So, a lot of the choices that I made were out of fear and obligation instead of purpose and passion. That's something that my friend Patrick, who hopefully we'll have on, talks a lot about
That's a
living life
nice
with
that's a nice way to
purpose
put it.
and passion. And I lived out of fear and obligation because, you're set up in Manhattan, you've got your job, you've got this, but I'm miserable. I'm partying every night. I'm doing this, not every night, but I mean, for the most part, once, I
We
just
did live above a bar.
I did. I sure did. And I tell you,
Was
that was a lot of fun.
awesome.
It's nice now at my age to like enjoy a cocktail or two and not take it to the levels that that we took years ago. And I think because when you make change, that's good. You develop an inner peace, like the peace that's inside of me now. It's derived from my belief in Christ and in God. And when you have that type of peace, understanding that it's going to transcend any human reasoning. It's nothing you can really explain, but like I know that whatever happens in my life, I'm going to be okay.
Yep.
So if I decided to move back to New York and you say, you know what, I'm going to do something completely different. It's going to be rough for a while, but I also know I'm going to be okay because I have a belief in a higher power. And I know what I'm doing is not, it's a lot bigger than what the job or the environment or the situation kind of presents itself to.
So when you moved from DC to Delray Beach, was that easier than the first
Yes.
time?
Yes, it was. It was
Yep.
I took a calculated risk. I had backup plans and I just little did I know, the winding road of life would bring me to this place in my life right now where, we talked about dating and other things and I still have human desires. I still have, needs and I still, I date. It's not like I'm sitting here, being dormant, but there comes along the line where you're changing so much that you strive for a certain um, mentality and a certain like not expectation, but it's almost like hooking up is fun. And I'm probably gonna mess up at some point and hook up with somebody, in
Tomorrow.
soon, right? But it's also being aware of this is not what I want. It's I'm gonna try to save myself for that person because
And
if
I
I
know
do,
that's, and for the people that listening, this isn't bullshit because I speak to Mike every day and he's being completely transparent with you and honest.
thank you for saying that. I really
Hmm.
appreciate that. And it's hard, man. Like, we talked about some of the situations that I've gotten myself into, and it's not that I look for this, but there are some things you still got to clean up. So when it comes to change, it's an evolution. Don't be afraid that you're going to be called a hypocrite because I feel that way sometimes. Oh, like this guy Mike is Christian, but didn't he do all that stuff in Manhattan and didn't he do all that stuff in DC? And you know, change is good. And those that criticize and judge are the ones that likely have not changed. Would you say that's fair, Greg?
Every time. Every time. They just don't want to shine the light on themselves.
You
That's that
know,
zero accountability we talk about. No one wants to have that conversation.
right? Because they're afraid to have that
Hmm.
conversation because some people are kind of afraid of the truth.
Of
And
course.
I think you bring a great point. With change comes truth. It really shows who you are on the inside. I mean, when you talk about the changes in your life, and you've gone through several life changing situations, how did you adapt? Like, how did you like going from dating your wife to now being married? How much of a change was that? Was it seamless, or was there a period of transition from that time?
That's a tough one because we dated for a very long
Yep.
time. So it wasn't see me, it flowed nicely. I don't know how else to describe it. It was just naturally flowing. It was good. There wasn't an interruption or ultimatums or this or any of the other stuff you may hear out there, or what other people go through, or like, okay, it wasn't segmented in my brain like, okay, we dated for 3 years, now we're engaged for a year, now
Right.
I didn't have the chunks or blocks of time, at least for me. My wife might be different, I don't know, you got to ask her. But we dated for a long time, and it just flowed nicely down the. I'm not saying there weren't, like, not every relationship is great all the time, but I'm saying as a whole it flowed downstream together the right way. There wasn't any hiccups or really anything along the way. But it was also the first time I had that, really. I didn't have that in the past, obviously. So,
Right. Did you seek out advice from people like in regards to some of those changes? Like,
like getting married or getting engaged and that stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I'm a big fan of asking questions and getting people's input. I store it all, and then it helps me when I make my educated decision. It doesn't sway me either way. I just want to get as much info as possible in all aspects before. That's just how I am before I execute on something. But yes, I definitely asked a bunch of people, and I was I was under the mindset of you have to have X amount in the bank before you do this. And I learned from talking to a bunch of people, younger, older, married, not married, guys, girls, there's never enough. There's never that perfect X in the bank.
right.
And if you want to be with somebody and you love them, there's no monetary value that you can have in your bank account that shouldn't stop you guys from doing your thing. I think I learned that lesson after speaking to a bunch of people. They all said the same thing.
Can you recall? Because it sounds like you had some mentors. Is there a mentor, or can you recall a mentor that really stood out to you? Because I feel like every phase of life is going to require a different type of mentor. I can speak that from my experience. I've had different mentors that I've been able to pull from and kind of create this vision of how I want to be. Can you recall any mentors that may have stood out to you, or that you saw? You said you were speaking to younger, older,
Yeah.
different people to get their perspectives. Did anything stand out to you? And can you also tell us the importance of having a mentor? Why men should have a mentor, even women should have a solid mentor in their life?
I'll answer your first question, your second question first. I think it's nice and it's positive to have the right mentor in your life, not a mentor, but the a right one. And you might have to talk to a few different people before you get to it. I think it could only a sounding board can only help
Yeah.
when you have issues or ideas, and it's not always negative. You can have positive things and you bounce them off a mentor. So I think it's a good thing for men and women to have that extra sounding board outside of their immediate friends or relationships. I think that's all good. Did I have a mentor like during my dating with my wife, you mean? Or
It could be getting into real estate. It could be getting
yeah,
in,
that
when we were
that's where I was
training,
that's the first thing
getting
I
other
thought of.
things. Yeah.
So my wife introduced me, well, we were dating at the time, introduced me to a guy. This is when I first got into real estate, brand new, just got my license. Now what? What do I do? And I'm in Manhattan. I don't have, I'm not born into it. I have to go out and scratch out a living. She had a friend that was already successful for a few years in the game, and she hooked us up together. So I met him out, and I still use the advice he gave me. That was a long time ago. To this day, to a lot of agents, and he didn't have to meet with me. He didn't have to take the time or anything like that. He's a great guy, and he gave me kind of the blueprint that he was given for to get started in real estate, and he had it like mapped out for the first 2 years, and I followed it to a T, and I actually did it in 1 year because that I just put my foot down and really went for it. So I am extremely grateful for the advice he gave me. It worked awesome.
Yeah. I kind of feel
Yeah.
like the younger generation don't seek out or does not seek out the advice of those that have made it. It's just some of the things
Yeah,
I think.
I completely agree with you. The entitlement and all the shit that's out there on social media, they'll strive for that, but they have no idea about what's going on in the background, deals
Yeah.
that are done, and agents and on all how many hands are in the pot. It's all skewed
Yeah.
numbers in my opinion, and if they only knew what truly went on, and they think it's easy, and oh, I'm gonna go on YouTube and make $1 million a year. Okay, good luck. You could. I'm not saying you
Yeah.
can't, but you have to do something for it. You can't just. It's not just gonna come to you.
Yeah. No, and I think people need to be aware of the dangers of not changing.
Yeah,
Greg.
the
I
world
mean,
is constantly changing. Whether it's right or wrong, that's not the point. If you like it or don't like it, not the point. Everything changes. Industries change. The market changes. You got to change with it. You know this. The show goes on. Nothing is going to wait around for you.
no,
Nothing's going to stay static forever. You
no,
have to adapt and grow with it. Look at your industry. Look at the
huge.
changes that COVID did. Just COVID. It changed the whole thing. If you
Really did.
can't adapt, you're done. You're a great example of adapting with it, and look what happens.
Well, thank you. You gotta. I think for guys out there, you gotta have a desire to want to be better than you were yesterday. And some people aren't built like that, and that's why mentors are important. A good
Yeah.
mentor will find the emotional triggers that really motivate you. I look at leadership because I'll be breaking it out soon. I got my Aaron Rodgers shirt for the Jets, and he's a leader, right? And he had a press conference the other day, and he talked about, you know, getting to know the guys and the qualities and attributes that are needed to be successful. And I think when you have a mentor, their job is to set you up for success, and they're going to provide for you, like your guy that helped you out in the real estate game when you first started. He set you up for success because what was supposed to take a year and a half, you did in a year, and you still reference those conversations in your
Every day,
business
every
today.
week, to this day, every week. Greg, what do I do? Well, this is what was taught. This is what worked for me. Maybe it'll work for you.
Yeah. And for those guys that are afraid of change out there, like Greg said, the world's going to keep on turning, the show's going to keep going on, and you don't want to be left in the dust. You don't want to be, light years behind,
Yeah.
but that's just in business, but just in life, a lot of people that we know are still going out 5 nights a week. They're still doing the same stuff they were doing 10, 15 years ago,
Hmm.
which we're not saying there's anything wrong. But if you want to take that next step in life, you have to evolve, whether it's joining a social league, or for me it was church, or working for myself and getting out there and being uncomfortable
Vulnerable.
and vulnerable and being okay with that.
Hmm.
And if you're not okay with that, that's okay too. You're just never going to change. And then you're going to see, oh, all your buddies are married, or all your buddies have houses, or all your buddies have jobs, or all your buddies are killing it in life. And here you are still doing your safe, um, living in your safe ecosystem, doing the same thing you were doing 10, 15 years ago and not leaping forward. And then you're home and you're wondering, why aren't I where Greg is or close to it? Why aren't I on the same level as my other friends? So there's a real danger in not changing.
Yeah.
And guys, you gotta be aware that change is good. Get out of that comfort zone, get out of that rut you're in, and do something different. It doesn't have to be anything earth shattering, but those little wins add up to something really, really big, Greg.
Absolutely. I mean, what did I always tell you when we used to have conversations when you were thinking about moving?
Yeah.
I always said the same thing. My dad taught me this.
Yep.
What's the worst that could happen? All right, you want to move to DC from Manhattan, and you should be. We would talk about. I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? Move back. You can always go back.
Yeah.
It's like when you're learning to drive a car for the first time.
Yeah.
I remember he was like, you can always stop the car. That's it. You can always stop the car. No matter where you
Simple.
are, stop the car.
Simple.
It's so simple, but people lose sight of that. And there are so many negative influences out there and traps, almost all these Instagrams and all the negative side of the social media. It's like it just sucks these people in, and it's so hard for them to fight their way out of it because they think they want that, and then they realize it's not what they thought, and they're in that rabbit hole of all the fake shit that's out there, and it's not gonna amount to anything.
Right. And we can use that as a piggyback from our last episode, um, or episodes ago. Just thinking about it now in regards to being a victim. We talk about, we mentioned a victim mindset almost on every platform that we
Because
talk about.
it's in the fabric of all these topics we're talking about. It's the
Exactly.
underlying theme and everything.
And we kind of look at these episodes as like a textbook. Every episode is like a chapter. And we always try to reference prior episodes so that you all can go back and
Hmm.
listen, because it kind of sets the stage for
Yeah.
future episodes. So when we talk about self-identity, self-worth, systems, taking stock, we want to kind of hammer that home so that those points can be ingrained in you when you're trying to make change. Greg, if I came to you and said, man, I really, really want to change this about myself, what actionable steps would you give me to make the change that I'm looking for?
I mean, it depends on the change you're looking for, but I would just start, be like, take me through your day to day. Start there. Start simple. Okay, because I don't know what change. It could be physical. It could be financial. It could be job. It could be moving. I don't care. Just take me through your day to day, and throughout your day to days, give me all your wins and all your losses, all of them. Just a simple thing. What are your wins? What are your losses? And when you see them on paper next to each other, and if your losses are longer than your wins, okay, let's start changing that, because you want your wins. We all have wins and losses. That's fine. Mike always says take stock, and daily we should think about our wins and losses and verbalize them. So, like the other day, I went in front of the investor. Long story short, was it a positive experience? No, but it was a win because we got the investment. So that's in the win category. And the loss is I was supposed to work out that day, but I didn't. All right, that's a loss. That goes in the loss category. But you have to hold yourself accountable and you have to list everything. You can't just leave one thing off because you don't want to really, I don't have to put that on there. Everything wins and losses. So the only advice I would say is start with your day to day. I would say take me through your day to day and how do your wins and losses, how does that look with the change that you want to make? Now let's work backwards from that.
I love it. And it's something simple.
Very simple.
I piggyback off that. You have to identify the change that you want. That's first and foremost.
And
It
the
could be
reason why.
and the reason why. And
Yeah.
like Greg said, it could be anything from
Hmm.
business, dating, personal, finance.
Yep.
You gotta identify the change. You gotta identify that change, but you also gotta want to change. They're kind of two in one. You gotta have a desire to change. A lot of people, don't want to change because they're stuck in a personal prison. And
They all think they want to change and they'll verbalize, oh, I want to change this and that. But the same people are in the same spot year after year. They're with the same person or the same type of person year after year.
year,
Oh, why can't I meet a nice guy? I don't know. Why can't you? Because you keep
right?
picking the shitheads because that's all you're putting out there and you're not making any changes. So how do you expect to get anything different if you're not doing anything different?
Exactly. And one of the topics that we're going to cover in the near future is addiction. And my friend is going to come on and talk a little bit about addiction and
Yeah.
what she had gone through. And it's really a message for everyone. And a lot of people want to change, but they don't have the resources to change.
Hmm.
So, guys, when you're looking to change, you've got to be able to identify the change you want. You have to want to change, but you also have to look at all the available outsource. I call it outsourcing. Whether it's a life coach, whether it's a friend, whether it's a priest, whether it's a support group, being able to identify those sources of support for you to make that change and to help that change stick is extremely important because if you go to your day-to-day operations, you identify your wins, you identify your losses, and you need to know how those losses get converted into wins, and
Yes.
you don't have the study material to pass that test of how to get those losses to wins, you're going to be stuck in the loss column. So outsourcing is extremely important, or having that support group. We talk about it every episode:
Yep.
community, community, community. And Greg is probably the epicenter of my community. So like when stuff hits the fan, he's the first person I call.
Yep.
And I'm grateful to have that community. I'm grateful to have that in my
Me
life.
too.
And so it's very, very cool. Greggy T. Any final thoughts on change? Anything that you feel would be relevant to kind of put the bow on this?
All I would say to everybody is don't be so afraid of change. You're going to talk to 10 people, you're going to hear 10 different things. You're going to hear a lot of negative stuff or, oh, you're crazy, or why would you want to do? That's just noise at the end of the day. If you truly want to do something and make a change, you'll do it. And if you're not doing the right steps or you're not going to actually execute on it or the commitment, then don't complain about it because you don't have a leg to stand on. But if you truly want to make a change, you'll do it.
Exactly. And that can be anything, whether it's your job,
Anything.
whether it's your relationship status, whether it's just
Yeah.
acting, how you act
Hmm.
is the awareness of wanting to change, whether it's, cutting back on your cursing, using the type of dialect. You know what I mean? It could be
I'm
anything.
getting good at it. I'm getting better at it.
I'm living proof of because my mouth was so foul.
So is mine.
And
Mine was bad.
I can still use that type of language on occasion, but having the awareness and the tools, understanding that everything that comes out of my mouth, I want it to be good and wholesome because I want to have the right response for everyone. Or I want
Yeah.
my conversations to be gracious and attractive so that I can be that change in the world. And that comes straight from the Bible and what I've studied, and realizing the words that come out of my mouth have life.
And that's a great point. And it made me think real quick. It's never too late to change. Ever. I don't
Never.
care how old you are. I don't care how any circumstances. It's never too late. I'll give these two examples. This podcast. We started out thinking it was going to be X, and it turned
Right.
out to be a completely different thing. And boy, are we glad
Crazy.
that it happened that way.
Crazy.
Also, Mike and I back in the day, pretty crazy. If we didn't change, we probably wouldn't be here. Change is good. And it just makes you appreciate those times even more. And we have no regrets. I would do everything the same for the most part. And it's change is okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. And it's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and getting out of your comfort zone. I think that's where it really comes down to. Because if you
I
don't step out of that, you're never ever going to experience the fullness of this
being
life.
being uncomfortable is so important in all aspects of your life. I talk about this in my coaching group and I
Yep.
speak about it with all the agents because if you put me in a room of 100 agents, all 100 will say the same thing. I'm like, what's your biggest fear? Public speaking.
Mm.
I'm like, okay, that's the normal response. Most people are afraid of public speaking. And then I'm like, why? And they can't really give me a direct why. And I'm like, but you public speak every day when you're going on listing appointments trying to get a house for sale. And when you're showing a property, you're public speak. There's no difference. You're just in a stationary captive room. But everyone is in their own heads thinking they're so afraid of it and they build off that and they build off that and all of a sudden they're terrified and petrified and they're like a deer in headlights. If I call them up on stage or if I call them out in one of my sessions, they freeze. And I'm like, why are you frozen? It's no different than how you were talking to me before this even started
Right.
or yesterday in the office
Right.
or in front of that client over there. There's no difference, but they get caught up in their head.
Right.
They have to change the way they think. And repetition, repetition, it'll help with that.
Right. I think that's awesome. It's a great point that you make there, and I think it ties into self evolution,
Hmm.
change, and evolving, constantly evolving, and realizing that change is a process. And we have to also make sure, and we want to throw this in there. You can't make someone change.
Nope.
If you're in a relationship and you want her to change, you can't force or project your ideals of what a partner should be on someone that isn't capable of handling that and living up to expectations that are unrealistic. You can't put unrealistic expectations on partners, on friends, on businesses, on anything
Hmm.
that is a cause for change. Like I for years wanted girls I've dated to be a certain way. They just weren't capable of that. And I just kept trying. I'm like, well, if I just hang in there, if I just,
Yep.
and you used to yell at me, like, get out of this. What are you doing? And I didn't see it because I was all about the lust and the
Yeah.
eye. And I was so hooked on the sex and the physical that I really let things kind of go to the side because I was getting my desires
Hmm.
met. And that really turned into a bad situation. Were those girls great people? Yes. And I some may be listening to this, and I really send them all love and blessings, and I hope that they're having a great life. They've got everything that they want and nothing but the best of them. But situations I should have left, I didn't because I was addicted to the sex. So can't make people change
No.
if you're in a relationship or even a friendship. And whether it's we talk about addiction, and whether it's it could be a porn addiction, it could be drugs, alcohol, it could be any type of addiction that has a negative net result is something that person they got to want to change. You can motivate them to change, but at the end of the day, you got to do the work.
So we know somebody that's been dating somebody for an extremely long time and nothing's happened there.
Mm.
She wants X, but it's never happened. And I always start with, she's like, Greg, what do I do? What do I do? Well, same question I get asked all the time, and it's the same answer. Well, how's your communication? And it's 99% that it sucks. There's your first problem. That's your first problem. You got to change that. But you can try to get better at something with somebody. You'll never change them, like Mike said. Mike's absolutely right. But what you could do if you're in a relationship and you're trying to get to a certain level and they're just not there, then you got to give yourself an end date. And you have to hold yourself accountable to that date. That's the other, those are two very hard things. The second one's harder than the first. I sat with this person, Mike knows who I'm talking about, for 4 years ago. And they set a date. Well, guess where they are right now? In the same situation, because they didn't hold themselves accountable to the date that they gave themselves to get themselves out of something that they're not getting what they want.
Right.
So then don't complain. You're not making the changes. Clearly, it doesn't mean enough to you in order to change. So you're not. So there you go. So next time you complain, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. And with change comes accountability. You gotta be held
Yeah.
accountable if you want to change. Because a girl that I dated used to always say actions. Because I'm a talker. I like to talk, but I also like to back it up too. But this, and it's something that stuck with me too, because you realize through the origins of your life where that behavior came from, and it's like, I got to talk less and do more. I can talk more and do more, but I'd rather talk less and do more because I won't expend as much energy
Yeah.
trying to prove that I'm worthy of you, when we need to take stock of ourselves, saying, listen, I'm worthy of you. Are you worthy of me? Can you handle what I have to offer? And change is such a complex topic, and we gave the listeners so many great nuggets of information. That writing your day to day out, identify the wins and losses, and really
Yep.
trying to get the wins up and the losses less. And like your dad had said, shout out to Freddie T. He's always with us. You can always turn the car off.
Yeah. You can always stop the car.
And that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
Greggy T, it's that time of the show. We want to give a shout out to our worldly listeners: India, Germany, Brussels, Belgium, Brussels, Belgium,
Yeah.
Great Britain. I think we had somebody in Canada, right, Greg?
Canada.
Wow, this is really growing, and
It's
we have
wild.
so much great stuff going down the pike. Greggy T, if someone wants to DM us, give us some feedback, click like and subscribe. Where can they find us, sir?
EmpowerManPodcast.com. Go to our website. All our episodes are there. You can read Mike's bio for 5 days. It's awesome. And also Instagram
Right.
and all the platforms from Spotify to iTunes, iHeart, Apple Podcasts. We're on everything. Please like, subscribe, drop us a comment, even if it's one word. It just helps us. We want to reach as many people and try to help people as best we can. We like to keep these short. We try to pack them full of information, and the feedback and the questions have been great. Keep them coming. It is Mike and I. We are reading all of them. It might take us a little time to get back to you, but we will. And if you have any topics, we would love to hear them. We have a bunch of guests lined up, some big ones, and we're really excited to share that with everybody.
Yeah, and we're so grateful to be in this position to
Yeah.
deliver great content and to really make a change. Change
Yeah.
starts with me and you, and hopefully it spreads to India, Germany, Great Britain, Canada, Belgium.
Here's the thing.
Yeah,
If we don't change as people in this country, what's going to happen? There's no way we can keep on this path with how it's going. A
yeah,
change has to be made. How is it made? By people like us,
yeah.
people like you guys listening, making those small changes every day, bringing like minded communities together, growing, and then spreading into other communities and growing. That's how change is made.
I couldn't have said it any better, my friend. I think that's a great place for us to kind of put the bow on this
That's it.
final, the second bow,
Yep.
and excuse me, and sign off. And I'm coming from the free state of Florida, home of our future president Ron DeSantis. Greggy T, listeners out there, Thank you so much for everything. God bless you all and be safe.
Thank you, everybody. Be good. Be careful out there.